The observation deck was eerily quiet, the faint hum of the ship's systems providing the only sound. Captain Michael Stone leaned against the rail, watching the foreign vessel drift lifelessly in the distance. It was massive, even in its apparent dereliction, sleek, with curved surfaces that caught the dim starlight. The ship was unlike anything recorded in human databases, and that alone made it extraordinary. Lieutenant Anders stepped beside him, his expression a mixture of caution and curiosity. "It's Zelvari," he said, his voice low. "Has to be." Michael nodded. The Zelvari were a race thought to have vanished long before humans took their first steps into interstellar space. Until now, the only trace of them had been a scattered collection of ancient artifacts and vague historical accounts. To encounter an intact Zelvari ship and one that appeared to be abandoned was a discovery that could rewrite what little was known about their existence. "Prepare the boarding team," Michael said finally. "We'll go over there and see what's inside." "Are you sure, sir?" Anders asked. "If it really is Zelvari, there's no telling what we'll find. Their technology." Michael raised a hand to stop him. "I'm not asking for opinions right now, Lieutenant. I'm asking for the boarding team to be ready." Anders hesitated before nodding. "Understood. I'll have them suit up." As the lieutenant moved to carry out his orders, Michael remained at the observation deck, eyes fixed on the mysterious vessel. He felt a flicker of excitement under his composed demeanor. It wasn't often that a captain got the chance to step into something entirely unknown. When the boarding team was ready, Michael joined them in the airlock. Anders was there too, along with a few of the ship's best technicians and engineers. They secured their helmets, checked their tools, and made sure their environment suits were fully operational before launching a tethered shuttle toward the alien craft. The shuttle docked with the foreign ship's outer hull, clamping securely to an access point that seemed to be an airlock. The team worked quickly, using a mix of human tools and advanced scanning devices to breach the hatch. As it opened, a faint hiss escaped, the sound startling in the silence of space. Inside, the ship was pristine yet lifeless. The walls glowed faintly with a soft, pale light that didn't seem to have a source. The air was thin but breathable, though their suits remained sealed for safety. As they moved through the corridors, the sense of emptiness was overwhelming. It was as if the crew had simply vanished. "Do you hear that?" Anders murmured through the comms. Michael paused. At first, he heard only the faint buzz of the ship's systems. But then there it was, a low, rhythmic hum. It wasn't mechanical, and it wasn't coming from their equipment. It seemed almost alive. "It's coming from up ahead," Michael said. "Stay sharp." The team pressed forward, following the sound until they reached a large chamber. In the center of the room was a stasis pod, glowing faintly blue. The hum was louder here, resonating through the walls. Michael stepped closer, his heart beating faster. Inside the pod was a figure, tall, lithe, and undeniably alien. The being's features were sharp, symmetrical, and entirely foreign. The skin had a faint metallic sheen, and the long, flowing hair shimmered in a way that didn't seem natural. It was clear, even through the pod's transparent casing, that this was no ordinary alien. It had to be Zelvari. "Captain," Anders said quietly, "this is incredible." Michael nodded, his eyes fixed on the figure in the pod. "We need to get her out of there," he said. "We don't know if she's alive or—" "She's alive," said one of the engineers. "The pod's life support is still active. She's in stasis, but all vitals are stable. At least, as far as our instruments can tell." "Then let's bring her aboard," Michael decided. "We'll revive her in a controlled environment. Carefully." Anders looked uncertain. "Is that wise, sir? We don't know what she's capable of." Michael turned to face his team. "We have protocols for first contact, and she's not a threat as long as we proceed cautiously. This could be our only chance to learn about the Zelvari from one of their own. I won't let that slip away." The crew exchanged glances but ultimately followed his lead. They disengaged the stasis pod from its housing and carefully transported it back to the shuttle. Once aboard their own vessel, the pod was placed in a secure medical bay. Michael stayed close, monitoring every step as the ship's medical officer prepared to revive the alien. As the stasis field slowly deactivated, the hum faded away, leaving the room in heavy silence. The alien stirred, her eyes fluttering open. They were a piercing shade of silver, and as they focused on Michael, he felt a chill run down his spine. There was no fear in her gaze, only cold calculation. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice smooth but distant. Her language was foreign, but their translation systems quickly rendered the words. Michael stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I'm Captain Michael Stone," he said. "You're aboard a human exploration vessel. We found your ship, adrift." Her eyes narrowed. "Adrift," she repeated, as if testing the word. She sat up slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. "How long?" "We don't know yet," Michael admitted. "But you've been in stasis for a very long time. Can you tell us your name?" There was a pause before she spoke. "I am Astra Valai." Her name carried a weight that made the room seem smaller. She was calm, composed, and her gaze swept over the humans as if calculating their worth. Michael didn't look away. There was something in her presence that demanded attention, something almost magnetic. "You saved me," Astra said after a moment. "Why?" Michael shrugged. "Because we could. Because we wanted to understand who you are and what happened to your people." Astra tilted her head slightly, a gesture that seemed almost curious. "And now that I am awake, what do you plan to do?" Michael's expression remained steady. "For now, we'd like to ensure you're healthy and comfortable. We'll provide you with information about where you are, and maybe you can help us learn more about your ship." Astra considered this. "Very well. But I will not be interrogated." "Of course not," Michael assured her. "This is an exchange, not an interrogation. We have questions, and I'm sure you do too." Her silver eyes locked on his. "We shall see." The tension in the room eased slightly, though Michael could still feel the weight of her gaze. This was just the beginning, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Astra's arrival was going to change everything for both their species and himself. The atmosphere aboard the ship shifted noticeably after Astra Valai was revived. Her presence had everyone walking on eggshells. Though she carried herself with calm confidence, her very existence seemed to demand caution and curiosity in equal measure. Michael, however, was more intrigued than cautious. He spent every free moment near her, trying to glean insights from their stilted conversations. It was during one of these exchanges that Lieutenant Anders finally spoke up, breaking the uneasy quiet that had fallen over the bridge. "Captain," he said, pulling Michael aside. "We need to talk. Privately." Michael glanced over at Astra. She was standing near the observation window, her eyes fixed on the stars. With a brief nod, he followed Anders into the ready room. "What's on your mind, Lieutenant?" Michael asked once the door closed. Anders folded his arms, his face tight with worry. "This isn't exactly protocol, Captain. We're taking a big risk keeping her aboard. What if she's dangerous?" "We don't know that she is," Michael countered, sitting down behind the desk. "So far, all she's done is answer a few questions and look out the window. No hostile behavior, no threats. Just a lot of curiosity." "Exactly." "She's sizing us up," Anders said, leaning forward. "We need to be more careful. We still don't understand how her technology works. She might be gathering information about us right now." Michael held up a hand. "I understand your concerns, but we're not dealing with a known enemy here. We're dealing with someone who was stranded and put into stasis for reasons we don't fully understand. Until we have a clear reason to distrust her, I'm not going to treat her as a threat." Anders let out a slow breath, then nodded reluctantly. "All right, Captain. But if she steps out of line, we need to act quickly." "Understood," Michael replied, rising from his seat. "Now let's get back. I want to know more about her ship, and Astra's the only one who can give us answers." As they returned to the bridge, Astra turned to face them. Her gaze was steady, almost piercing, but there was no hostility in it. If anything, there was a hint of amusement. Finished with your discussion? She asked, her voice as calm as ever. Just making sure everyone's on the same page, Michael said. Astra, I'd like to ask you a few more questions about your ship. Are you feeling up to it? She tilted her head slightly, as if considering the request. What would you like to know? Michael gestured to a nearby console. Let's start with the propulsion system. Our scans show it's unlike anything we've seen. Can you explain how it works? Astra approached the console, her movements graceful and deliberate. She studied the displayed schematics for a moment before speaking. Your scans are limited. What you see here is only a fragment of the system's true structure. The primary drive is based on field harmonics that I doubt your current understanding of physics can fully grasp. Anders frowned. Try us. We're fast learners. Astra's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. If you insist. The drive generates a field that interacts with subspace layers, creating localized distortions. These distortions allow the ship to move without conventional thrust. It's not about pushing through space, it's about bending it around the vessel. Michael nodded slowly. So you're not actually moving through space at all. You're slipping through it. Close enough, Astra replied. But I'd advise against attempting to replicate it without the proper safeguards. The consequences of a miscalculation could be catastrophic. Anders stepped forward. So you're saying your people mastered a technology that could tear space apart if used incorrectly? Sounds reassuring. Astra's expression remained unreadable. It was never meant to be used recklessly. The Zelvari valued precision above all else. We did not take shortcuts. Michael cut in before the exchange grew more tense. You said we. Does that mean there are more Zelvari out there? Others who might still be alive? Astra hesitated, her gaze dropping for the first time. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. I don't know. It has been a long time. Too long. For all I know, I am the last. The room grew silent. Even Anders didn't push further. Michael studied Astra's expression, searching for any sign of deception, but he found none. Instead, he saw a flicker of something else, an emotion he hadn't expected. Is that why you went into stasis? He asked. To survive after whatever happened to your people? Astra's eyes met his, steady once more. I went into stasis because there was no other choice. The details are not something I am ready to share. Not yet. Michael nodded, deciding not to press the issue. All right. We'll respect that. For now, let's focus on what we can learn from your ship. Anders and I will handle the technical side, but we may need your guidance to understand certain systems. Are you willing to work with us? Astra studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. I will assist where I can. But do not expect miracles. Some knowledge cannot be shared lightly. We'll take what we can get, Michael said. And we'll do our best not to ask for more than you're comfortable sharing. Anders raised an eyebrow. That's assuming she trusts us enough to share anything at all. Astra turned to him, her expression unchanging. Trust is earned. Do not presume I have given it. Michael placed a hand on Anders' shoulder, giving him a subtle shake of the head. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. For now, we focus on understanding her ship and its systems. The rest will come in time. As they returned to the console, Michael and Anders began analyzing the data Astra had provided. She stood nearby, observing their work but not interfering. Occasionally, she would point out an error or suggest a better approach. Her calm, logical guidance helped them piece together fragments of the propulsion system's design. Slowly, the picture became clearer. When they finally took a break, Michael leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. This is more complex than I expected. Astra, how long did it take your people to develop this technology? She considered the question before answering. Generations. It was not something achieved overnight. Our scientists and engineers devoted their lives to perfecting the drive. It became the cornerstone of our exploration efforts. Anders let out a low whistle. Generations. That's a lot of time and effort. Makes you wonder why it's not used anymore. Astra's expression grew distant again. Because those who created it are gone. Without them, the knowledge was lost. I am one of the few who still remembers the principles behind it. Michael leaned forward. Then we're lucky to have you here. With your help, we might be able to learn more about how it works and maybe even understand what happened to your people. Astra glanced at him, her silver eyes unreadable. We shall see, Captain. We shall see. The conversation ended there, but the questions lingered. Michael knew they had only scratched the surface of what Astra and her ship could reveal. There was still so much to learn, so many mysteries to unravel. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that their encounter with Astra Belai was only the beginning. Michael stepped into the conference room, pausing briefly as the door hissed shut behind him. Astra Belai stood at the far end of the room, her attention focused on a holographic projection of her ship's schematics. Her hands moved fluidly, manipulating the glowing diagrams, twisting the image to expose intricate layers of alien engineering. He cleared his throat softly. Astra, do you have a moment? She turned slowly, her silver eyes narrowing. I am busy, Captain. What is it you need? I wanted to go over some of the data we pulled from your ship's mainframe, Michael said, approaching the table. We're seeing patterns in the power systems, ones that don't make much sense by human standards. Thought you might be able to help us interpret them. Astra regarded him for a moment before gesturing to a nearby chair. Sit. Show me what you found. Michael placed a data pad on the table, activating its display. Charts, waveforms, and annotated diagrams filled the screen. Astra leaned in slightly, her expression shifting from detached to intent. Her fingers hovered above the display, though she didn't touch it. Instead, she nodded slowly. This pattern, she said, pointing to a series of overlapping waveforms. It is not a power anomaly. It is a maintenance cycle. Michael frowned. A maintenance cycle? But it's running continuously. That would drain your systems. Not when balanced correctly, Astra explained. The cycle is designed to maintain optimal efficiency by adjusting subsystems in real time. What you are seeing is the baseline level of activity, not an error. He leaned back, considering her words. So it's more like an automated calibration? Yes. It ensures that the ship remains functional even during long periods of inactivity, Astra said, her voice carrying the faintest trace of pride. It is a self-sustaining process, far more reliable than manual oversight. Michael exchanged a glance with Anders, who had entered the room quietly. The lieutenant nodded slightly, acknowledging Astra's explanation. That explains why we couldn't find any energy spikes or fluctuations, Anders said. The system was never meant to turn off. Exactly, Astra replied. She looked back at Michael, her silver gaze steady. You have been assuming that your technology and mine operate on the same principles. That is a mistake. Michael sighed. I guess we've got a lot to learn. Indeed, Astra said simply. She turned her attention back to the holographic display, as if dismissing him. But Michael wasn't ready to leave just yet. There's something else, he said. We've found references to an auxiliary module, something that seems to be isolated from the rest of the ship's systems. Do you know what it's for? Astra hesitated, her fingers stilling above the hologram. Her expression darkened. I am not certain I should share that information. Why not? Michael asked. If it's important, we need to understand it. It is not a matter of importance, Astra said, her tone cool. It is a matter of trust. You have given me no reason to believe you will use the knowledge wisely. Michael opened his mouth to reply, but Anders stepped forward, his voice sharper than usual. We're the ones who brought you aboard, kept you alive. Doesn't that count for something? Astra turned her head slowly, fixing Anders with a measured stare. I did not ask for your assistance. Michael held up a hand, signaling for Anders to back off. What he means is that we're all trying to figure this out together. We're not looking to exploit you or your technology. We just want to understand it. Astra's gaze softened slightly, though her expression remained guarded. Understanding is not so easily gained. It must be earned. I have not yet decided whether you are worthy of such knowledge. The room fell silent for a moment. Michael glanced at Anders, who looked like he wanted to argue further. Instead, Michael nodded. Fair enough, he said. We'll focus on what you're willing to share for now. But I hope that, over time, we can build the trust you need to open up more. Astra inclined her head. We shall see, Captain. As the conversation ended, Michael felt a weight settle on his shoulders. Astra's words were a stark reminder that the gulf between them was not just technological, it was deeply personal. Trust, it seemed, would be harder to achieve than he had anticipated. The small shuttle hummed steadily as it cruised through the void, Michael at the controls and Anders seated beside him. Astra stood silently behind them, her arms crossed as she observed their progress. The coordinates she had provided led them far beyond any mapped sector, deep into a region of space where few ships dared venture. This is some pretty uncharted territory, Anders said, glancing back at Astra. You sure we're not flying straight into a black hole or something? Astra gave him a cool look. I am certain. Anders muttered under his breath but said no more. Michael shot him a warning glance, then turned his attention back to the controls. The starlit void outside the cockpit seemed endless, but the faint energy reading on the sensors grew stronger as they approached. There it is, Michael said quietly. The outline of a large station came into view, its silhouette faint against the distant starlight. As they drew closer, the structure's details became clearer. A Arch outpost. A repository of knowledge gathered over generations. Knowledge about what? Michael asked, adjusting the shuttle's course. Everything, Astra replied. Technology, medicine, astrophysics, linguistics. It was meant to preserve what we had learned and allow future generations to continue our work. However, when the Great Calamity struck, the outpost was cut off. I had assumed it was destroyed. Clearly not, Anders said, eyeing the station through the viewport. But if it's been sitting here all this time, why didn't anyone come back for it? Astra's gaze darkened. By the time the calamity ended, there was no one left who could. The mood in the cockpit turned heavy, and even Anders fell silent. Michael brought the shuttle alongside a docking platform, and the station's automated systems responded, guiding them into position. When the docking clamps engaged, the shuttle shuddered slightly. All right, Michael said. Let's see what we're dealing with. Anders, grab the tools. Astra, lead the way. Astra nodded and moved to the airlock, her expression unreadable. Michael and Anders followed, the hiss of the pressurizing chamber giving way to a stark silence as the hatch opened. Inside, the station was almost unnervingly clean. The air was thin but breathable, and the lights flickered on as they entered, illuminating wide corridors and high, arched ceilings. This place is huge, Anders muttered, his voice echoing slightly. Feels like we're walking into a museum. In a sense, you are, Astra said. She moved with purpose, leading them deeper into the station. The central archive is ahead. That is where the core data is stored. As they walked, Michael couldn't help but notice Astra's subtle changes in demeanor. She seemed more at ease here, her movements more fluid, her tone less guarded. This was her territory, her history. And yet, she still remained reserved, her expression carefully neutral. Do you recognize any of this? Michael asked as they passed a series of intricate wall carvings. The designs looked almost like ancient scripts, flowing and interwoven. Yes, Astra replied without looking back. These are the names of those who worked here. Scholars, engineers, linguists. Each line represents a contribution they made to the archive. Anders slowed his pace to examine the carvings. You're saying each of these lines is a record of someone's work? That's a hell of a tribute. Astra stopped and turned to face him. It is not a tribute. It is a record. The value lies in the knowledge they preserved, not in their individual legacies. Anders held up his hands. Okay, got it. No tributes. Just records. Michael suppressed a smile at Anders' discomfort, then addressed Astra. Let's keep moving. If the core archive is intact, we need to see what it can tell us. They continued on, the halls growing narrower and more labyrinthine. Finally, they reached a large chamber filled with glowing terminals and towering data columns. The room was eerily quiet, the hum of dormant machinery the only sound. Astra approached a central console and placed her hand on a glowing panel. After a moment, the lights brightened, and the columns began to hum faintly. The core archive is still functional, she said, her voice tinged with relief. Accessing the primary database now. Michael and Anders stepped closer, watching as holographic interfaces flickered to life. Data streams filled the air, scrolling faster than their eyes could follow. Astra manipulated the interfaces with deft movements, her focus unshakable. This is incredible, Anders said, leaning toward one of the holograms. There's so much here. Medical advances, engineering principles, stuff we've barely scratched the surface of. Astra glanced at him. Do not touch anything. Anders raised his hands defensively. Hey, just looking. Michael leaned closer to Astra. Can you find out what happened here? What caused the station to be abandoned? Astra hesitated before replying. Perhaps. But the answers may not be simple. She continued working, her expression growing more intense. Michael could see the strain in her movements, the way her jaw tightened as she navigated the archives. After several minutes, she stopped and turned to face them. There is something, she said. A project that was never completed. It was meant to ensure the survival of our knowledge, even in the event of total loss. What kind of project? Michael asked. Astra hesitated again, her silver eyes flicking toward him. A replication system. An artificial construct that could preserve and replicate our databases without biological oversight. It was never fully implemented. Anders frowned. So it's still here? We could finish it? Astra shook her head. It was deemed too risky. The construct's parameters were unstable. If activated incorrectly, it could cause irreparable damage to the archive. Then why keep it? Michael asked. It was a last resort, Astra said simply. A failsafe. If all else failed, it would be activated. But that time never came. Michael glanced at Anders, then back at Astra. Can you show us? Astra regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. She turned back to the console and brought up a new set of holograms. This time, the data displayed a complex array of interconnected systems, artificial intelligence, storage arrays, power grids. It was intricate, almost impossibly so. This is the construct, Astra said. It is dormant, but functional. Michael stared at the projection, a sense of awe washing over him. It's incredible. It is dangerous, Astra said firmly. And it must remain inactive. Anders crossed his arms. So what's the point of showing us if we can't do anything with it? Understanding, Astra replied. Nothing more. Michael nodded. We'll leave it as it is. Our priority is learning, not taking risks. Astra's gaze softened slightly, and she inclined her head. A wise decision, Captain. As they stood there, surrounded by centuries-old knowledge, Michael couldn't help but feel that they had uncovered something truly extraordinary. Yet he knew that this discovery came with great responsibility. They weren't just exploring an ancient station, they were stepping into the legacy of an entire civilization. And that legacy was now, however cautiously, in their hands. Michael tapped the edge of the console, staring at the hollow display of the station's schematics. The auxiliary systems had been running in the background since their arrival, maintaining the delicate equilibrium of the facility. Despite Astra's warnings, he couldn't shake the feeling that the replication system might hold the key to something greater if approached carefully. "Captain," Anders said, leaning back against the wall, "I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get the sense she doesn't want us touching anything here." "Ever." Michael turned to Anders and then back to the data. "We aren't touching it. Not yet. But if there's a way to understand it, to see if it can be controlled safely, shouldn't we consider it?" Anders folded his arms. "Maybe. Or maybe we should focus on what we've already learned. We've got volumes of data on this place, enough to keep our scientists busy for decades. Why risk waking something we can't handle?" "Because knowledge can't just sit in a vault forever," Michael replied. "If there's even a chance we can unlock something that could benefit humanity and whatever is left of Astra's people, we have to consider it." Anders opened his mouth to argue, but Astra's voice cut through the room. "Your reasoning is predictable, Captain," she said, stepping into the chamber. Her movements were calm, but her eyes carried a sharp intensity. "You see potential and immediately want to act upon it. That is your species' nature. And also your weakness." Michael turned to her. "It's not weakness. It's curiosity. And you said yourself that this facility was meant to preserve knowledge so that it wouldn't be lost." Astra tilted her head slightly. "Preserving knowledge and wielding it are not the same. The replication system was never meant to be used recklessly. It was a contingency, not a resource." "But you know how it works," Michael pressed. "If you were here when it was created, then you understand its potential better than anyone. Help us figure out how to do this the right way." Astra hesitated. For the first time since he'd met her, she seemed genuinely uncertain. She glanced at the holographic schematics, then back at Michael. "And if I refuse?" Michael shrugged. "Then we don't touch it. I'm not going to force anything. But I think you want answers just as much as we do. I think you're just as curious about what could have been." Astra's expression tightened, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she stepped closer to the console, her fingers hovering over the controls. "If I were to guide you," she said slowly, "it would be under strict conditions. One mistake, and this system could destabilize the entire archive." "Fair enough," Michael said. "What do you need from us?" Astra glanced at Anders. "A second set of hands. Someone capable of precision work. Someone who will not deviate from my instructions." Anders raised an eyebrow. "Me? You're asking me to help?" "I am," Astra said. "Do you have a problem with that?" Anders rubbed the back of his neck. "No, it's just unexpected." Michael gave him a pointed look. "You said you wanted to focus on what we already have. Well, now's your chance. Work with Astra and figure this out. We'll go slow, take every precaution." Anders let out a long breath, then nodded. "Fine. Let's do it." Astra turned back to the console. The replication system's parameters must be recalibrated before activation. If the calibration is off by even a fraction, the entire system will shut down permanently. "So no pressure," Anders muttered under his breath, stepping up beside her. Astra ignored the comment and began explaining the process. Her voice was steady, calm, and filled with an authority that made Anders pay attention despite himself. As she detailed the steps, Michael watched from the side, ready to step in if anything went wrong. Anders worked carefully, following Astra's instructions to the letter. The two of them moved in tandem, Astra guiding, Anders adjusting the settings. At one point, a warning light flashed on the console, and Astra's hand shot out to stop him. "Not yet," she said sharply. "This sequence must be completed first." "Got it," Anders said, his voice tight. He waited for her signal before continuing. Hours passed, and the room grew quiet except for the faint hum of the machinery. Michael could feel the tension building. Every step felt like a balancing act, a delicate dance that could go wrong at any moment. But slowly, piece by piece, the system's calibration came into alignment. Finally, Astra stepped back. "It is ready." Anders exhaled, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. That was intense. Michael stepped forward. So what now? Astra hesitated again. Now we test it. Carefully. Anders glanced at Michael. You sure about this, Captain? Michael looked at Astra. Can you shut it down if something goes wrong? Yes, she said. But only if I act quickly. There is no guarantee it will function as intended. Do it, Michael said. But keep a close eye on it. The moment something feels off, shut it down. Astra nodded and activated the sequence. The room filled with a low hum, and the holographic display shifted, showing streams of data flowing through the system. The replication system began to spin up, its intricate processes coming online for the first time in centuries. At first, everything seemed stable. The data streams remained steady, and the system's output matched Astra's predictions. But then, a fluctuation appeared, minor but noticeable. Astra's brow furrowed, and her hands moved swiftly over the console. An unexpected variable, she murmured. Should we shut it down? Anders asked, his hand hovering over the emergency override. Not yet, Astra said. I can compensate. Michael watched anxiously as she worked, her movements precise and deliberate. The fluctuation stabilized, and the system continued to run. Astra let out a small breath, though her expression remained focused. It is functional, she said finally. The system is stable. Anders lowered his hand, his tension easing. So that's it? We did it? We did it, Astra confirmed. For now. Michael stepped forward, looking at the holographic readouts. What does this mean, Astra? What can we do with it? Astra glanced at him, her expression unreadable. It means that the knowledge stored here can be preserved indefinitely. It means you now have access to information that can guide your people in ways you have not yet imagined. Michael nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. And what about you? What will you do now? Astra looked away, her gaze distant. I will remain here. This is my place. Michael frowned. You don't have to stay. You could come with us. Work with our people, help us understand what you've given us. Astra shook her head. My duty is to the knowledge here. It is my responsibility to ensure it is used wisely. Anders smirked. Looks like we got the better end of the deal. Astra turned to him, her silver eyes steady. We shall see. Michael smiled faintly. Thank you, Astra. For trusting us. She nodded. Perhaps, in time, trust will come more easily. As they prepared to leave the station, Michael couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and gratitude. Astra's knowledge, her guidance, had given them a glimpse of what was possible. And though their paths would now diverge, he knew that her presence had forever changed the way he viewed the universe.